happens once, right? And that's relatively short term. Continued inflation means over a long period of time. It looks like a Christmas tree, all right? And one of the keys there is demand-induced or supply-induced. Normally what most economists believe is that inflation is demand-induced. So, as a matter of fact, I think I saw something else in the Krugman blog.
Well, isn't that for...
That was talking about this recently, and was doing a smackdown on somebody else. I was thinking about showing that to you today.
Isn't that for... Not for one shot,
Yeah,
right?
one shot, yeah.
It's more, the inflation is more for the continued, not for one shot. If 80 keeps increasing...
Well, inflation is inflation. I'll show you. I'll show you what the Krugman blog was saying recently, especially because government budget is a big issue. What's going on with the government budget right now, Matt? What's going on with the government budget as of today? You know, have you heard the news?
Unfortunately,
Well, Social Security.
They have to like say the budget of the government.
That's right. By the end of today, if Republicans and Democrats can't agree on a budget for the next year, money runs out.
That's why
For 800 Today's the last day.
That's not even like
They don't do business on weekends unless they call an emergency session. So, all the money for, potentially for 800,000 government employees will run out at the end of today. Once they make an agreement, right? And sometimes these things happen very shortly after a deadline, right? Once they have an agreement and these programs will be funded for the most part, minus any changes. And right now it seems like there's been a big sticking point between, you know, two figures. Cutting $33 billion from the budget, cutting 65 billion, something like that. As of this morning, it looks like they say they're 70% of the way there, which is still a long way to go. And the current figure is 37 billion they're going to cut from the budget. All right. So what should be done and how it should be done is, you know, a source. What's that? Yeah. It's a source of contention. It looks like they still need this. So I'll show you the blog later. Other questions? Do you remember chapter 15? Chapter 15? Okay, I know that's, you know, I kind of sprung it on you last class, but, you know, whether you're talking about fiscal policy, taxes and spending, or you're talking about monetary policy, which is money policy, right? There's still the belief by some economists that expectations has a big impact on what's going to happen, all right? Or what won't happen, even though you want something to happen, right? So if you're going to use the banks or politicians to try to improve an economic situation, if enough people anticipate that, then all you might do is just cause the prices to rise. Now, if you think that people will get caught off guard, they'll get fooled for a little while, that's called adaptive expectations, right? Where I was saying, thanks to Friedman, his natural rate theory, he says most people walk forward by going like this. You know, they kind of look at what just happened to determine what they think is going to happen next. And that's not the way to go forward, right? Whether you're talking about the, you know, the final end of season rankings for the NCAA men's basketball world, where almost nobody picked who was going to be in the Final Four based on what had just happened. You know, even though UConn was red hot. Or you're talking about inflation, you're talking about other things. Okay? So you could be subscribing to that, or if you're just talking about rational expectations, there won't even be a gap. Some people, enough people are plugged in that they'll make an adjustment immediately. As soon as you try to move AD, government, there'll be enough people in Saras that will adjust, and Saras will shift to the left. All right, so that's expectations. Bless you. Yes?
Is the rational expectation theory
Yes. Anticipated. That's right, anticipated policy. So the question is, so if policy is fully anticipated, what could happen? Like, you're about to make a move, but people are ready for that move. They're going to adjust the same time you make the move, right? You're going to increase spending, going back a unit, people will start to cut back because they know you're going to spend for them. And you have perhaps crowding out. Or some people say, you know, if something's going to happen with the banks, then they'll make an adjustment as soon as that strategy, whatever it is, goes into effect. And you're not going to really help the economy. There's enough people that are plugged in waiting to make that move. I mean, I have high school students saying, Michigan, do you think the Fed's going to make an announcement to do this today? Or, you know, have you seen what's going on with the stock market? Or, you know, what's going on with bonds, how they're buying back bonds, $600 billion worth. I think if I have some, I know we have sharp high school students here in Chaminade, not necessarily the typical ones that you would find in other high schools across the country, but if they're doing it, chances are a lot of business owners are tracking current events. They're ready to make a move too. Yeah.
So, because of people, like, the majority of defensive policies are again,
That's exactly right. And there's a phrase in your book we haven't mentioned, but it's called the policy ineffectiveness proposition. Which is the belief that, yeah, a lot of times policy will be ineffective to people anticipate.
so they should keep everything secret.
Yeah, perhaps, but then you lose transparency, right? But what are you doing?
Those just making out. Oh, we don't
Those shady politicians, those secretive bankers. So, yeah, that's a lot. What else? T accounts, sure. Because there's a lot of different ways to ask questions based on T accounts, and you have a good clump of them on multiple choice accounts.
All right, let's say that. So first of all,
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Blake.
so whatever I deposit, like the liability,
Deposits go on the liability side.
side, and then you do whatever the excess and reserve thing, but I'm kind of confused, like if someone takes a loan out, where those two go, what the home,
Loans go on the left,
those go on the process.
they go on the asset side.
So like,
And then what happens is somebody, because, I mean, how do banks make money? Loans, right? Loans are worth something. That's really how they make their money. So they consider it an asset, okay? When you enter that as an asset, on the right side, there's got to be some kind of balancing figure. And so if I make a loan to you, do I give you the cash typically? No, I give you an account with us, a checkable or demand deposit account. So on the right, on the right side, I put, $10,000 checkable deposits, demand deposits blank. On the left side, it says $10,000 loans. That makes sense? So the only thing you should have on the right side is demand deposits or checkable deposits, DD, CD. That's the only thing. So those terms are interchangeable, it's the same thing.
some deposits, takes out a little bit of check.
Because what they're doing is they're saying they can use that money on demand. Kind of like when you're watching stuff at home, it's like, buy video on demand, whatever you want. Or take money out, or have the ability to write a check for the money that is available to you on demand.
I'm pushing just like last 8 months when, you know how you have a private reserve. Well, let's say someone deposits $10,000 and then it was like 10%.
Sure.
So you have to have $1,000 in car reserves. So
Right.
someone takes out a loan for like $5,000, then you have to, you get a new, like, required, like, you get a new car reserve. It's like since the amount of money got changed.
So deposit.
So like,
Do you have to do the 10% times the assets or times the liabilities?
You have 4,000 months.
Times the liabilities, the right side. So all you did was, manipulate things on the left-hand side. You broke up the left side, started as $10,000 in reserves. Next step is, all right, I'm going to have 100 of that as required reserves. The rest of it is excess reserves, leftovers. Now I'm going to give some of that as a loan, perhaps I can loan against. All right, and if I loan against the way that I've taught you, you can say, now I have another 5,000 on the right-hand side. I have to do 10% of that. No, you created that. You created that. So you don't have like this spiraling effect inside one bank's T accounts? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
Yeah, I'm just like, I mean, it was more like, if, I don't know, if it's like 10% of 10,000, then so you have 1,000 saved here, and then someone takes out a loan, but like in cash, and let's say they take out 5,000.
Well, if it's in cash, then that's a little different.
And then if someone
But
makes,
that's not stipulated on
if someone makes
ACH.
a deposit,
What's that?
if someone makes another deposit,
Yeah, and you have to add that. So let's say that, that's a good question. I don't know if you can visualize this quite yet, but let's say, Kathy walks into my bank, she deposits $1,000, required reserve ratio is 10%. I have to put $100 aside, 900 for loans, maybe make some loans, but not all of it goes towards loans. Some of it is, I buy bonds for our bank, and it sits there. And then Matt walks in and deposits another 1,000. Well, I have to put another 100 aside, and how would my T account look? Required reserves is now a total of 200, correct? And that's how the T account should look at that point. Yeah.
Right, another two, like, okay, you have to have 10%, like, let's say the requirement is 10%. You have to have 10% of all, can your required reserve ever be more percent than how much you have in your liabilities? You know what I mean?
You can,
Okay, that's what I'm trying to say.
required is, who's requiring it?
But,
Government, right? The government. If you want to go beyond what the government requires, that's fine, and that just becomes excess reserves. So reserves just means money you're holding on to that you're not loaning out,
I know.
right?
No, I'm saying,
Asset.
let's say someone deposits whatever, 10,000, and you have, and the required reserve is 100, and then later on you have only like $500 total in your bank, right? You still have to have that 100 like
Yeah.
locked up. It wouldn't
You gotta
change
lock it
it.
up.
It wouldn't change to 50.
Whatever the law is, you have to comply with the law based on the deposits on the right side of the account. You can't dip into it. You go one of the reserve requirement, you're breaking the law. Because the whole point is that what we learned after the Great Depression was people need to have confidence that at least some of the actual money is sitting in the bank. Now, if you watch the documentary Inside Job, they make a good point about investment banks, which, especially after deregulation, did not have to have reserve requirements, right? They didn't have to have. It was just to loan out as much as they possibly could, or, investment banks actually have a different role than commercial banks, although it's become blurred. But, it was just freewheeling. It doesn't have the same, they have not, and probably still don't have the same kinds of requirements that commercial banks do, all right? So, ultimately, that's one of many factors that led to the collapse of some banks, and almost the collapse of our entire financial system. Because, if you don't have a long place, a lot of times people just get tempted to say, I'm going to push it to the max, right? If I make money through loans, how am I going to make more money in the short term? By loaning everything that I can, or loaning 80%? Well, loan everything, right? Because I get to earn interest on all $1,000 rather than earning interest on $800. And there's an interesting piece in Inside Job too, where somebody was with a lot of the heads of major banks saying, please save us from ourselves. Let's do something to regulate this because, we can't do it for ourselves. We're just, we can't muster the strength to do it. Or maybe perhaps they feel like they can't compete if the others are doing it and they don't. So let's bring it back to athletics, right? Like they don't pass some law that says, I can't call Matt Gudis, this top recruit, or I can't call Jamie Benham, some top recruit for Zach, or whoever, right, during certain times of the year. Then the expectation is that now all college recruiters will be calling all year long. Otherwise, they're going to get left behind. They won't be able to compete, right? One of the things that got Rick Neuheisel, the current UCLA coach, in trouble was that he always tried to push the boundary on rules when he was at Washington before that was brought. So like, for instance, there's a law that said, or a rule in the NCAA that says you can't seek a recruit during certain times of the year, right? Called a dead period, perhaps. Or maybe you can call them, but you can't see them in person. So they have dead periods, they have quiet periods, they have contact periods. So like during one of these periods where you can't see a recruit off campus, he drove to the kid's house and called the kid from across the street and said, hey, look out your window, I'm out here. So how's it going? It's like, so creepy, right? But, so he wasn't breaking the letter of the law, but he was obviously violating the spirit of the law. So he didn't go in the kid's house, he didn't see him face to face, but he kind of see him through 2 panes of glass. You can see him through, you know, the kid's window and his car window. And he did that with some recruits. He probably felt that if he didn't do that, he couldn't compete. Well, it's no different in the banking system, right? We don't save them from themselves to some extent. I'm not saying that we need to determine everything, all the decisions they make, but that's the argument for having some basic regulation or having reserves, right? Otherwise, banks will push it to the max and it won't necessarily be healthy. Yeah.
So what happens if like they doesn't have a card, they don't keep the card?
It's possible their charter could be revoked.
Like even if it's like a big chain like Wells Fargo.
It's possible. Now, you know, part of the controversy recently is because the regulatory agencies have been cut down significantly. So they have not been checking as rigorously as they could. Maybe they should. Yeah.
For open market operations, could the government buy equity securities like stocks? Would that work?
What would that stimulus?
I think it's just that individual business they're buying stock in.
So some business, let's say it's Deardorff Corporation, old stock, has cash, has a lot of different assets. And they say, all right, we're going to go to Deardorff, we're going to buy some of his stock in exchange for cash. They could do that. They're allowed to do that.
Would that increase the money supply? Really?
It could. Yeah, it does increase the money supply. It's not something that we typically entertain. It's a possibility. There are some things that the Fed did that goes way beyond this class, which I don't have the expertise to be able to explain, that they did to try to help save the economy, where, you know, some people use a metaphor for spaghetti up against the wall, just saying, we're going to try every possible thing, both with some of the workers. So yeah, lowering the reserve requirements, lowering the discount, you know, open market operations, and then other stuff. Is there a hand over here? Chapter 12?
Yeah.
You should know that. Different functions of not just the Federal Reserve, but the Treasury and the Bureau of Printing and Engraving. Now we have some time to work out some examples. So who's got a specific question they want to see worked out? We went over some excellent questions last class. Give me a topic, I can do a sample question for you.
Could you do the game questions just slower?
Which ones?
The question from the game just slower.
No, I'm doing a different format today.
Alright.
It said something like it wants to tracks and out here.
Which one was it?
Fully expected.
Oh, fully anticipated policy?
Yeah.
All right, so let's say that we're here. That's supposed to be long range, but we're pretty darn close. All right, and the Federal Reserve says they're going to increase the money supply for some reason. We increase the money supply based on the chain reaction. You know, what's the first thing that happens after that? Interest rates decrease, and then loans increase, and then consumption and investment. The two components of AD, Russia. Two components of AD are consumption and investment. Those increase, which of course mean that AD is going to increase. Right? Because what are the pieces? What are the components of AD? C plus I plus G plus NS. Those two things. If people anticipate that this is going to happen, and that perhaps prices are going to rise, and more importantly, that aid is going to shift right, you'll have some of these people, particularly suppliers, starting to cut back on their workers. And all you're going to do is make prices higher. There are some people that argue that's exactly what's happening, because it's been fully anticipated what's going to happen. Prices are rising right now, and how's the unemployment rate working out? Not so great. I mean, yeah, it's gradually declining, but you don't see a whole bunch of people going back to work, right? You still have the guy in my neighborhood who had his own company, and he's pizza boy now. He's older than me, working at Z Pizza, and he gets called in. Last week, they're over at the house. Our daughters are having a play date. He had already worked at the pizza place all day, and he's sitting on my couch and he sees a call. And he's like, oh. He knew right away they were going to call him in to Z Pizza. They needed him in a pinch. He needs money one way or another. We have a family where there's a guy who's working construction. He's been out of work for months. The female is she's a school counselor, and she just got pink slip. She's not coming back next year because all the cuts in LAUSD. Last night they had a meeting in Castle Bay Lane Elementary School, public school that my kids go to, all right? And they were fighting over what to do with a little bit of extra money that they fundraised because they have to fire people. One of them's probably going to be, Kip Nairn, probably going to be his uncle. It has nothing to do with whether Kip's uncle's a good teacher or not. He hasn't been a teacher very long. It's based on seniority as much as anything else. So they're firing teachers, right? I don't see the unemployment rate getting significantly better anytime soon. In my son's class next year, it's going to be 37 kids to one teacher. As of now, at Castle Bay, we're going to have 37 kids. My daughter's class, I think it's going to be 33, 34. All right, there has been a state law. It's a little higher than where you were, ratio-wise. There used to be a law. There was a law in place that said you can't go more than 20 to 1 in grades 1 through 3 in the state of California. But all bets are off now because of the budget crisis. Now, speaking of current events, I do want to show you now Paul Krugman's blog. How about this? The European Central Bank, all right? Not talking about the U.S. He says, I haven't had time to comment on the European Central Bank's decision to raise rates. All right, which rates can they raise? The federal funds rate, right? Right? No. The discount rate. That's what a central bank can raise. The federal funds rate is the commercial banks to commercial banks, member banks to each other, right? So what's happening in Europe? Let's say that the central bank for the European Union is raising the discount rate and perhaps the required reserve ratio, but I don't think that's what he's talking about. Despite very high unemployment. Wouldn't you normally expect the opposite? Right? This is what we've been talking about. Do something with the money supply to lower interest rates to ultimately have this chain reaction kick in and raise the employment figures. But apparently that's not happening. And he says, first of all, one thing you want to understand is that their numbers look very similar to ours. And here's something that has to go back to inflation that Paul brought up, right? Wage price spiral. You don't need to know it for the test, right? But it's another part of how we try to describe the cause and effect for inflation. Wage price spiral. In other words, like demand induced, if we pay people more, they can buy more stuff, right? That's a shift in AD. If the shift in AD happens because they're paying people more stuff, at some point, prices of all things go up, including the stuff that sellers have to buy as supplies, then they're going to have to raise their prices. Well, once they raise their prices, the workers say, we need a pay raise. If they give a pay raise, workers buy more, all prices go up, and it's this spiral effect upward. It's called wage and price spiral. On the two sides, they kind of reinforce each other. So that's what he's talking about. Even more Ryan ridiculousness. He's talking about somebody that's proposing a plan he's obviously in opposition to. I gotta come to this part. The government. There's one more. All right, questions? Next request. We need to see a T account problem. Tell me. Let's say you had this question. You had Bank A. Recording. Let's say new deposits come in of 10 grand. And this company's required reserves are $100. What could their loans be? Shh. Hey, cut down the extra talking. What could their excess reserves or loans be? There's going to be a question on the test.
9.9.
Excess reserve.
$900, right? And then let's say in this chain reaction, Bank B comes along.
Whoa.
Who said 900? I wrote it.
No, he's right.
It's not.
What should it be?
9,000.
That's right, 9,900.
Take that extra credit.
All right.
Do you do that on purpose?
Yeah. I was going to stick it. So 9,900, they make loans of 9,900, and then whoever uses that, uses it, and it gets deposited in Bank B.
If there's no cash linkage,
I'm saying,
No, I'm
you're
just
stealing my thunder,
I'm
man.
making a joke.
It's not a joke. It's actually the focus of this question. Let's say that now, I'm going to start over. Make it easier. Let's do 1,000. Fine. What happened?
Because there's less money.
The rate change.
Nope.
Because there's less money deposited in there, you have to lower.
There was cash leakage. The question is, how much cash leakage?
$5.
What was the cash leakage? 900 times 3. $5. Can you figure out what the required reserve ratio is based on Bank A's number? It's 10%, right? So did all 900 get deposited right here?
Oh, $50 cash leakage. It's
That's right, $50 cash leakage. See that? All right, because this has got to be $850. But that means not all 900 got deposited in Bank B. That's $50 in cash, isn't it? We have a question like that. Do you know the difference between this and this?
Yep.
Yes,
The
banking system.
Good on that?
banking system is ELR.
Correct?
That
Right?
Yeah,
The Fed or JB Vent. I would say JB Vent walks into a bank. Sounds like the beginning of a bad joke.
the bank of
Walks
banks.
in, deposits $1,000. Do we count 1,000? Only if we say, what's the maximum possible increase? If we say, what's the maximum possible increase due to the banking system, then you don't use 1,000, you use this. You set aside some, and then the leftovers, you plug in right here. Other questions? We only have 5 minutes left.
it's
When the full amount that could be deposited in this chain reaction of one bank to the next doesn't happen.
isn't it like, if you take a loan,
Right.
and that's like,
You take a loan for $900 and you don't spend all of it.
yeah, you spend like $850 and then you pocket $50, that's cash leakage.
Cash leakage from the money expansion process. Because we call this a money expansion process.
But if you're writing into the account and you have that, where would it go?
$50 isn't in the T account, the T account's with the banks. $50 in somebody's pocket. They're in their drawer at home. They're in their car. You know, it leaked from the system. What you write where? You would write 850 under asset. Excuse me. You would write 850 under liabilities. For Bank B. Is that what you're asking? Okay, what's your question? That, if there's leakage, it would happen after Bank A.
Yeah.
It would happen after Bank A. Banks don't leak, people do. Thinking of guns, Frank? Guns don't kill, people do. You heard that phrase? Guns don't kill, people do. Well, think of it this way, guns don't leak. People do. People do.
Jamie, go for the season.
All right, there's no questions. I expect A's on Monday. Tuesday.
What will we have to use it for?
You will not have to use filter. It's just expectations theory.
Wait, so you're gonna expect us to get A's.
Yep.
So won't that take out the effect of us
Is that right? Nice to be.
due to the DIP?
Tell me.